in the room itself, as you may be able to see, we have Kevin, Eric, and Anne who are present in person. We've got Joe online with us. So with 5, we've got a quorum. We call the meeting to order at 7:06. So anyone wish to speak during the public engagement? Okay, for minutes, still waiting on the minutes from June 27th. I know that is something that is still in process, as the meeting has to be rewatched to have those redone. And did send out meeting minutes from November 4th. Is there a motion to have those minutes approved as presented? And is made. Welcome, Catherine. Catherine is joining us at 7:07. So we have a motion made and seconded to approve the minutes of November 4th as presented. We have a motion made. Do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Joe. He got
yes.
And Kevin is taking notes for this evening. Thank you, Kevin. So any discussion on the minutes? It was a short meeting. Seeing none, all in favor of approving the minutes as presented for November 4th. So because we have a hybrid setup, we need to do this by roll call vote. So we'll do this first by those in the room, then we'll do online. So Eric.
Yes.
Yes. Kevin.
Abstain.
Kevin is abstaining. Anne?
Yes.
Anne is yes.
Yes.
Catherine's yes. Joe?
Yes.
Yes, and I'm a yes. So we have five in favor, 1 abstention. I will go ahead and mark up the meeting minutes as approved and send those on as appropriate. Item number 4 is the town meeting from Saturday and possible action items. So for those who were at the town meeting, thank you for joining in a 4-hour-long town meeting. It was rather spirited. It dealt with lots of zoning issues. So Mark, you'd be proud. There was also a town meeting that Reading had. I'm not sure if you followed what's going on in Reading at all. And I mention it because they actually were debating a very similar issue to Wakefield, and that was MBTA compliance. And both towns, by my take, approved. Reading was a little bit more overt in their terminology, a paper compliance plan with MBTA zoning requirements for 3A. So, but that did pass, and we're now in the 10-day period following the town meeting per our charter. Once that 10 days is passed, then the motion will be deemed fully affirmative. So Mark, just so you're aware of, there will be another thing added to the recodification. Not sure when and how that needs to be factored in, but I'll let you know when I get a copy of the final pieces of that, because I think
great. It still has to go to the AG, so I'll just take my sweet time and make it fit in the recodification, and then when the AG approves it, I'll put it in.
Okay, that's sounds appropriate. But it did pass the town meeting, so that was the big item on the agenda of the 8 items. The other item that came up on the agenda that was there were 2 other items of potential interest to this group. One was by our own Eric Reed, and that is on the annual report, a recommendation for adding some items to the annual report. I recommend that we revisit that at a subsequent meeting, either in December or January, so that we can have a discussion on the inclusion of items from the building inspector's office. And that was the essence of that article. Is that a fair characterization?
Yeah, voted down too.
It was voted for indefinite postponement.
Postponement.
So Which is different than just a negative vote slightly different than a negative vote on the main article.
Yeah.
So a vote on indefinite postponement defers hearing further merits of the item. So that's how ultimately that ended up going. As I recall, the motion did not pass in its first try, but the debate that was had on it was not on the merits so much of the concept, but really on the technical components, and that's something that this body is certainly appropriate to consider. So, not knowing how this body will reflect on it, the 6 members who are currently appointed will have that discussion at a future meeting. But I think that it's certainly appropriate and ripe for us to review. That was warrant article 7. Warrant article 8 was a different sort of animal, and this was an article that dealt with international affairs, not local affairs. And in my personal capacity, I moved for indefinite postponement, which passed by approximately 115 to 10 or so votes. It was not something that I considered to be relevant to a town meeting. And as such, again, at a future meeting of this body, I'm going to recommend that we amend our general bylaws to make it so that the body as a whole of town meeting can choose whether to hear the full presentation or not on articles that may not be relevant. So it will not deny people the right to come to town meeting. It will not deny people the right to have an article at town meeting, but it will have the ability to deny people the platform to have a captive audience of substance. And that's very different. So that's something you'll see come up in the future. But to be very clear, the intent is not to deny people their right to free speech. It's not to deny people their ability to have an article at town meeting, and it will be up to the meeting itself is the intent behind any changes. In addition to also prevent the conflicts that have now happened at the last 2 town meetings with religious holidays and religious practices, to prevent that from occurring as well. So to put in a procedure by which the town council will be able to put dates out in advance, and there can be an objection period to those dates with reasons by citizens who are affected by it. And if there's no objections, then the town council can choose from any of the dates, or they can choose from the dates and times that have no conflicts. So that way it allows for a mutual respect between the town meeting and the citizens who are managed by it. So those are things that I expect will come up at a future town meeting. And we have the basis behind it already in place with our public hearing. So none of these should be particularly new concepts to the town. That brings us over to Attorney Bobrowski, as you get to make your way back to your desk. Zoning recodification. On the website, it's just listed with today's date, and that has to do with on the bylaw website with the numbering that has been used by Attorney Bobrowski. He's calling this draft number 5. We never received drafts 3 and 4 for consideration. So to prevent confusion on the website, it's just referred to as we had draft 1 and 2, which we received, and then this is effectively the 3rd draft that we are considering. So without asking Attorney Bobrowski to change his methods, we will at some point just add a note onto that page that says drafts 3 and 4 were not received by the committee, and they were internal use. So that's how I plan on handling that. So that's the administrative piece to that. And with that, Attorney Bobrowski, the floor is yours to go over those changes.
So let me just share a couple of things with you. Can I get a share screen? Thank you. Oops. So the reason there's so many drafts is that my
We like change.
great helper Ruth Terry, my former office manager, when I give her something, I've usually like the last meeting that we had, I addressed a whole series of changes that we discussed back in June, and I made those changes. But Ruth is the queen of formatting, so I gave her the task of going through this to find formatting related issues, and Ruth gave me back this email, I think.
And we can now see your screen.
Hang on. I dug it out of my emails just so that you can see the exchange back and forth between me and Ruth. Well, let's suffice to say that Ruth, I don't need to bore you with the details, I guess. Ruth found about 15 things that are really just format related. And that's my next task, is to go take her notes to me and to make those very minor changes that she's found off in the text, if you will. I mean, for example, in the current definition of membership club, if you look at it, there's a typo, and it was something that wasn't, it's an original definition from your old book. So, you know, the word was portion, the P and the O were left off, and that's a Ruth edit. So that's the kind of thing that drags us from draft 4 to draft 5, because Ruth doesn't want to confuse it with my draft 4. And there were roughly 15 of those things, which I'll make and then send it to you. I thought what would be useful tonight is if we did some exercises in the current world of the governor's this is the ADU stuff that the governor passed back in May. Can you see that?
We can see that. Thank you.
Okay, so when I'm working on this
before you get too much into the details, there was some additional formatting and similar types of issues that were raised by Mr. Reed, and I forwarded those comments on to you, so you may find some of those relevant as well.
Well, I was waiting for Ruth to give me her best effort, and now that I have that, I'll put Mr. Reed's email with that, and we'll do them all at the same time. So this is the bill that was passed back in August on behalf of Governor Healy, and this is now what the governor and the legislature want to see towns do with regard to accessory dwelling units. And I'm reading this as if this is a mandate. So this is not, you don't opt into this. You're going to have accessory dwelling unit regulations that look like this. Let me just point out a couple of places in which your existing section 8.1 in the bylaw now differs from the model here. And the first is that your maximum size or apartment size, which is 8.1.5, says the minimum floor size will be 300 square feet, but in no case will it exceed 25% of the habitable area of the dwelling unless the ZBA decides it could be bigger. And this is a prescription that the size of the gross floor area of the ADU is not more than half the gross floor area of the principal dwelling, or 900 square feet, whichever is smaller. Just keep this in mind as we go through.
But that also means that there's no minimum size.
No, there's no minimum size. There is a maximum size. The second major difference is that the governor's bill, if I can scroll down here, in the next full paragraph, no zoning ordinance or bylaw shall prohibit, unreasonably restrict, or require a special permit for a single ADU in a single-family residential zoning district. Yours is by approval of the Board of Appeals through a special permit. The third major difference is that the governor's bill shall not require owner occupancy of either the accessory dwelling unit or the principal dwelling. And yours in section 8.1.3 does require owner occupancy. I would note that site plan review is okay. There is a mention right there of site plan review. So you can substitute that for the special permit procedure that you have today. So I guess the question that I'm leading off with tonight is, are you okay with the changes that the governor has mandated? Do you want to talk about them some more? I mean, your existing section 8.1 is inconsistent.
Mr. Pride, I figure you probably will have some comments and
I'm under the impression that we clip ours out and put this in there, right? Isn't that, if this is a mandate, then that's it,
Yeah.
right? Take it out and put it in.
Yeah.
I know the planning board is reviewing the differences to incorporate what we have to put in. But the understanding that the town planner had was there were some areas where we still could have.
Having trouble hearing the participant there.
if you can speak up a little bit, just because it has to reach this microphone.
Sure. So I know the planning board is looking at the two articles, what was passed by the state and what we have currently locally to compare the two. The
Yeah.
town planner was under the impression that there were some areas as far as things like setbacks where we could still have some local control over those. So they were going to compare and basically in the next month or two, look at those and come up with a recommendation for that.
Yeah, the provisions of Governor Healy's do say that reasonable regulations can still be imposed, including dimensional setbacks, bulk and height of structures may be subject to restrictions on short-term rental. So those are the kinds of things that the governor deemed reasonable.
So we might want to wait for planning board to look at it, and I know they're gonna send this group their recommendations to make sure everything's in line, but.
Okay,
that
I
might-
have I've reached out to the new head of the municipal law unit at the AG's office, Kelly Gunnigan. Margaret Hurley, for those of you who knew her, has moved up to some other job in the outfit. And I've asked her, you know, this is kind of early in the game with this having just been enacted back in August, as I said. There aren't apparently that many towns that have taken a crack at this yet. I asked Kelly if she's seen anything she likes and if she can share it as a template. So I'm still waiting to hear back from her, but I may be a bit early to be that lucky. But if the planning board is working on it, you know, I guess if it could become, I can communicate to the planner that I'm on standby, and if they need any help, I'll be happy to jump in.
That will be helpful. So what I am hearing is that this does raise one of the issues that has come up already, which is if this is going to change things from special permit site plan review, then it becomes a matter of who is responsible for that site plan review.
Yeah.
Which is still the ZBA.
I mean, I would think that the two likely candidates would be the planning board and the Board of Appeals.
Is there a sense of which one might be better for
Well, the
those?
planning board, if I remember correctly, let me just get the zoning up here for you.
I think planning board's preference is for that to stay with CBA since they've done it for everything else.
Yeah, I think it's already with us. I think that was the question raised at the last meeting or the previous meeting, the last meeting you were at, Mark. about,
I think from everything I've heard, that makes sense. I think people think it should, people in the know think it should stay the way it is. That it's working and that we shouldn't make changes. It could do something unintentional.
Yeah, and ZBA is just used to filling that role, whereas planning board is not in Wakefield at least.
Right.
So Mark, are you able to hear that okay?
Yeah, I remember that the marching orders after the last meeting were to go back to the old system, which is that if the use is as of right, it's the planning board. If the use requires a special permit from the ZBA, then the ZBA does the site plan. Is that correct?
correct.
That sounds accurate.
So,
Yeah, so it's bifurcated a bit. We'll leave it to you
One thing I wanted,
how to document that.
one thing I'd like to address on that mandate from the governor. Does she mention anything about within the confines of the house, or can you do an addition and make that part of it? Because a lot of times I'm not myself not excluded. I don't mind if you put an addition on the house because you can always do the loophole and ask for an addition first and then come back to the ZBA and then do your in-law apartment. But a lot of people know that, so they just come to us anyways and put the addition on the house and then make that part of the in-law apartment, which in our bylaw you're not supposed to do. But if you know the loophole, you just do it. You know, the way I mentioned it. Put the addition on first, come back in 6 months.
That's kind of harks back to Governor Baker's ADU efforts 3 years ago now, in which he said, by right in the principal dwelling and by special permit in a detached building. You know, just to share my thoughts on this is, it's very noble of both Governor Baker and Governor Healy to try to make it easier to do an accessory dwelling unit. But of the affordable dwelling units in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, I have a hard time believing that anything more than 2% of them are accessory dwelling units. A friend of mine wrote an article many years ago, so it's certainly stale information, but that was her estimate, 1 to 2%. So why? It's a lot of energy to, capture a very small prize.
Any other questions on the ADUs? It sounds like this is something that could increase the usage of ADUs and create additional density with people creating ADUs. Because effectively, it sounds like a person could take a single family house, now divide it, and by creating these ADUs by right. And there are certainly plenty of houses in town that have done that, hopefully with special permits, but this would allow it by right and make it so that a single family house becomes multi-tenancy as long as there's enough parking. That's just from my perspective what I'm seeing where this is. I know that the west side near the commuter rail station, there's quite a few properties where this has been done. They weren't originally built, it was originally built as a single family house, and Albion has quite a few of them, and then they became ADUs and have become multi-families through that. So this becomes a way to create that multifamily without a special permit. Is that an accurate take on that? Is the intent is? Any other questions on ADUs? Back to you, Attorney Bobrowski.
The other item, Mr. Chairman, that was in the Healy bill that probably has an impact on what we're doing here is there's a provision now that has been added to try to rescue some lots that would otherwise have merged into a single lot. So exemption to the merger doctrine for certain lots in common ownership. Adjacent lots under common ownership shall not be treated as a single lot if at the time of recording or endorsement, they conform to the then existing requirements. Not less than 10,000 square feet and 75 feet of frontage, located in a zoning district available for residential use. And you get to build a house not to exceed 1,850 square feet of living area, not less than 3 bedrooms, and not be used as a seasonal home. So I would suggest that we just take this and put it in your dimensional requirements so that everybody understands the law has changed here.
Any objections? Think that sounds like that would make it a good idea. I would encourage there to be a reference to the sections of law that it's referencing, so that going forward, we can try to keep things reasonably in sync with the updated laws.
Yeah, this doesn't change the more important provision in section 6, which is that if your lot had 5,000 square feet and 50 feet of frontage and was legal when created, and it was never held in common ownership with adjacent land, you get a house forever, and there are no limitations with regard to the size of the house. And this does not, I don't interpret this to wipe that out. If you note the first sentence, adjacent lots in common ownership, that this is chapter 48, section 6, paragraph 4, sentence 2 that's being changed. The larger merger provision, anti-merger provision, is in sentence 1. So we just stick with the statute there. And then if you're interested, there's a whole additional language that's been added here that allows for contests to an appeal by someone other than the original applicant. So a neighbor shall have, the complaint has to sufficiently allege and demonstrate that measurable injury will occur. And then in the next paragraph, late in the game, but here it is finally, the court may require a plaintiff in an action to post a surety or cash bond not more than $250. And there's another provision on a later page that says that the appellant can also be held responsible to post a bond or a surety to cover the expected attorney's fees and costs of the permit winner whose permit has been appealed. I think probably in terms of why we're not moving very fast in building housing for people, it's that a lot of it gets appealed. And once it's appealed, it's 2 to 3 years for the appeals to work their way out.
So this is what I'm interpreting this is that
I don't think you need to worry about this for the bylaw. I think I'm just.
I don't think but for people to understand what this change is, the significance of it is that a ZBA decision, if someone feels that they're adversely affected and they are not they're not the person who brought the action, their neighbor or otherwise, they may be liable for the attorney's fees if in fact they are not found to prevail. Is that a fair understanding?
Yeah, I mean, read the last sentence. It used to be that in order to make the neighbor post a bond, you had to find bad faith. But look at that. Nothing in this section shall require bad faith for the court to issue a bond. This is been broke a long time. Governor Baker tried to fix it 3 years ago, but frankly, he blew it. And now this is much better. The only thing I know of that's better than this is the appeal provisions for a smart growth project under Chapter 40R, where there really aren't any limits like 250. And it's expected that in every case, when a neighbor appeals a smart growth project, they will post a bond equal to the carrying costs plus the expected attorney's fees. I actually think it's double in under 40R. So it's good in the sense that it just discourages people from filing appeals that are going to cause delay without really having any merits. So other than that, I think, the meeting that we had, I can't recall when it was back at the end of September, I think, was the meeting at which we went through the June changes. I've now made those. I've sent those to Ruth. Ruth has told me about 15 typos, which I'll now fix with Mr. Reed's comments. We're talking now about the ADU and the merger provision, which we need to put in. You're telling me that the MBTA needs to be added eventually. I have added, for example, in the new draft, the self-storage overlay district. So that's been taken care of. Let me just grab that for you so you can see. So self-storage. This is the guts of the section, what is now section 9.8. But there are other sections that were in the amendment as passed by town meeting that they go in other places. So for example, self-storage facility overlay district has been added to the list of overlay districts in section 2, which is the section about districts. As I interpreted the language of the amendment, it said that a self-storage facility is allowed by right in the LI and I districts and by special permit in the B district, as well as in the self-storage overlay district. A little unusual, but that's what town meeting said. And then these are the basic rules that I pulled out of the town meeting article. And then I added, I believe, a definition for self-storage as well. Here's those damn. Yeah, there's the definition for self-storage facility.
And senior housing.
Yeah. I'm working for a client here in Concord who is today and has been for a generation, a continuing residential care community as defined and regulated by Chapter 93, Section 76. And I'm kind of, the more I learn about it, the more I'm rethinking this senior housing facility bylaw. I think it would be better to just call it a continuing CCRC, continuing care residential community. And then that brings in, by definition, independent living, assisted living, skilled nursing, which is a long-term care facility. And it makes it clear that these senior housing facilities, in some circumstances, are going to be CCRCs. If you Google CCRC, there's only about, I want to say about 40 or 50. My client is the Deaconess facility right next to Emerson Hospital. So rather than invent something new, I'm thinking that the whole title here ought to be CCRC.
Will that have any material impact on the existing facilities that were created by the prior overlay? Obviously, they will have a grandfathering effect. I just want to make sure that they're not, as they continue to evolve and make minor changes, that they're not going to have a new set of regulations that they now have to adhere to that's materially different.
No, I don't think so. I think that the facilities that were permitted under some other law by special permit are in all likelihood going to need modification of that special permit as a non-conforming use. But I don't think that that necessarily is a problem because a special permit is a special permit. So, for example, any such facility shall be treated as a non-conforming use or structure. These are the ones in existence. And I think it's apples to apples because any such facility, if they wanted to change what they were doing anyway, would need a modification by special permit as a non-conforming use. So, or a modification of the original special permit, because I'm thinking that any facility like this that you've already approved 20 years ago probably was approved by special permit.
I'm sure that, and what I'm thinking about here is Brightview, which is one of the larger facilities in town, and if they wanted to add levels of care or change what their classification of levels of care, that they would not have to go through any other process than they would have to do today. That's and it's not that I'm trying to protect them as a business or anything. I'm just trying to make sure that we're not creating additional hoops for facilities that exist today. And my reason here is really purely political, that if we have to if it's going to create additional problems, it will cause us problems with recodification getting accepted.
When this was created, senior housing was a colloquial term that was just thrown out there without perhaps much knowledge of a term that should have been what we were really talking about, because Brightview has all of this. Brightview has all of these levels of care.
I'm not sure that they have as much in each. The segmentation and the breakout,
But
rather
the
special
Wakefield
permit
one
is different.
Certainly has.
They have a continuum of care, agreed.
continuum of care. So, and I think that was part of the goal when we passed this 20 years ago. So is it just a matter of now using a term that is more accurate to what we passed that would allow other
Other facilities.
yeah, other facilities and with the aging population? I mean, I think you're right. Politically, it's always tricky, but shouldn't we try to be more correct in the language we use?
I just want to make sure we're not going to get into a problem where we get the real estate, the real estate groups to try to take action against the recodification based on something technical. That's the reason why I'm bringing the issue up. If it's not going to be any material change, I think that that's something that we will need to make very clear that existing licensed facilities will still go through the same process under the recodification that they would have to go without the recodification. And if that's really the case, which is what I'm hearing, I think then it becomes really a naming game, a shell game, which I think is fine. I just want to make sure we're not creating a problem for ourselves. So in a similar way, we don't want to have a turf war between the planning board and ZBA over site plan review. And we'll have meetings with them early next year, each of those boards, and then all the boards together to try and make sure that we're in agreement as to who has what responsibilities. And you've probably figured out that this issue is just politically very sensitive because it was attached to other projects that were very, very divisive in town that none of us want to relive. So that's where I'm looking at this saying, okay, we want to make sure that we're doing the right thing, both for the future and for the present users.
Attorney Bobrowski said that as long as they're under special permit, whatever's under this special permit would carry over. But that was a
Hard to hear that.
new zoning district, right? Is that equivalent to a special permit then?
So the Attorney Bobrowski, could you hear that question?
Only half of it.
So you mentioned as long as basically the change won't impact anything under their current special permit. But that a special zoning district was created for Brightview that Dan referenced. So is that equivalent to a special permit, or are there differing effects because it's a zoning district that would, I guess, become outdated now by changing the terminology?
Yeah, you're talking about the old assisted living facility overlay district, right?
Correct,
Right.
which under this would effectively go, my understanding is that it would go away because it would be
Yeah.
deemed relevant.
Yeah, it's gonna be one of those things that we're going to just, you can see the list of overlay districts there. And it isn't there anymore. So that means that the thing that was approved because it was in that district is likely at this point non-conforming because the mechanism for its approval has been rescinded. So if the only time it would, I think, impact an existing assisted living facility, for example, would be if they wanted to now change. Right? Where are the rules for them to change? Well, they're in this thing that's in the garbage pail. So they could certainly change as a non-conforming use, which is what they are now. And the test is whether or not what they want to do is less detrimental than what they were doing before.
So what I'm hearing is that the test will be based upon some proposed, if there is a proposed change, it would be based upon at that time, if the change is just in a very general sense to the ZBA where the change would be adjudicated, is it less detrimental than the then present situation, whatever it is.
Yeah, exactly.
And that way, because they're non-conforming, now they will continue to be non-conforming, and there isn't a need to maintain a district that only had one property affiliated with it. Because we're now creating that actually as a right to be created in other districts. So it's a more general use. We're expanding actually the ability to do it without having to designate a map segment for it.
Yeah,
Is that a fair characterization?
yes.
Okay. Any questions, feedback on that? This is an issue I'm quite confident we are going to have to address multiple times as this gets into discussion. So understanding this in some detail is quite important.
I mean, I think, Mr. Chairman, it might not be a bad idea to who is the proprietor of the existing assisted living facility in the old, about to be rescinded assisted living facility overlay district?
The proprietor is a company called Brightview. Attorney McGrail has been their land use counsel.
Okay,
And I know he's been to most of these meetings, and I'm sure he will likely review this one as well.
all right. Well, I mean, since he's been so intimately involved with this process on this and other subjects, I don't have a problem with just calling Brian and talking it through with him to make sure that he's okay. Because the last thing we want is for him to stand up at town meeting and say he's not okay.
Exactly. And that would be fantastic, because we do want to make sure that he is able to lend his expertise in support. He also serves frequently as special counsel to the special municipal council for land use issues for the town. That's something he's been appointed as a special municipal employee many times for various projects.
Yeah.
So it's something getting his support will be very helpful.
Okay, I'll give him a call.
Thank you. Next issue.
I think that's pretty much all I've got on my hit parade this evening. I think, we should probably strategize a bit about maybe having another rollout meeting. I enjoyed that meeting we had in the room you're in tonight. We're getting much closer now. This is very close to being a document that we're ready to send to the planning board for the statutory public hearing.
I agree with that as well. I think that for the strategy piece, we did receive a request from the Zoning Board of Appeals to have a meeting with them early next year and to go over some components of that. I think that's a good idea. And I think a separate meeting with the planning board as well. And then we can start the way that it works, at least here, is that I think we should also meet with the town council, select our version of select board, because some issues are now going to go before them as well. I think at that point, at the conclusion of those 3 meetings, we'll probably have the recodification in substantive enough format, possibly even as we go into the meeting with the town council, to submit it to them for the statutory referral to the planning board.
Any chance we could do one of those meetings before the Christmas holiday?
The I know the Zoning Board of Appeals is not available for that. They made that pretty clear.
Okay,
Kevin, any thoughts on the planning board?
We might be able to for planning board. I know we have an agenda for November 26th, but I don't believe the December meetings have anything firm on them. So planning board might be a possibility.
do you know the date of the December meeting?
I believe it would be the 3rd and the 17th.
17th would work for me if of course, if the planning board's got other business that night, can't fit it in, I understand, but
I
could
don't
we,
think we do as of now.
yeah, if you could make it known that I'm available on the 17th and that, I could certainly make these changes to the next iteration, so be my draft 6, you're behind Ruth and me, but whatever.
So December 17th is a Tuesday,
Yeah,
a Tuesday evening, just for the members here. Is that something, as we're all pulling out and looking at calendars?
would
December 17th.
would the bylaw committee also participate in the meeting?
I would anticipate that it would be a joint meeting with
Great.
bylaw review, just so that we can
Yeah.
get feedback as well.
That'd be great. Well, I certainly would like to do that. Knock off one, do the board and appeals and the select, or the town council rather, after the first of the year. And then, I'm ever mindful that we've got a town meeting coming up with a warrant closure, so
So
you're the first of my meetings too. I think you told me last time, April 28th or May 5th.
as likely for town meeting, the date has not been set yet.
Well, knowing how the planning department always likes to have the warrant articles early, not late, I'm anticipating a warrant closure February, maybe early March at the latest.
So December 17th,
Yep,
Okay.
I can do that then.
you'll be there anyways. And Joe, you're okay with that?
It's, Yep.
Okay. So the only person who might have an issue with that is possibly myself, but I will probably be able to be at the meeting. I may just need someone else to be a chair in the room for that meeting if I'm not able to be back, because there's a family member that may be in surgery at that time. So that would be my potential conflict. So, but I think that sounds good. I'll contact the chair of the planning board and the town planner so that we can try to plan for that. And that'll be a good time to get any direct feedback from the planning board before it goes back to them. So if there's any changes, that can be introduced to the ZBA and town council as well. I'll also contact the chair of the town council so we can try and get on their calendar as well. Would you want to try and get on to the town council's agenda sooner or after that?
I would say the best for me would be roughly the first of the year is a Wednesday, so the week of the 6th of January, that'd be ideal, I think.
So they will probably meet on the 13th and 27th. They typically meet on second and fourth Mondays.
Mm-hmm. What's their meeting night?
Well, what was the question?
What night do they meet on?
Monday. They're actually meeting tonight while we are as well. They're across town.
So you think their first meeting will be on the 13th?
That would be my expectation.
Cool.
And as a former member, that seemed consistent.
Yeah, I think December.
We're really looking at January 13th.
Yes, I would say January 13th.
December is too soon.
Should be the 13th and the 27th. Meetings that way.
27th, I think they may have to move just because that may be. No, actually, that should be fine. That won't be a holiday. So
When does the ZBA meet?
So yeah. Martin's Kings of 20.
In December or just in general? 'Cause
First
we're only
meeting in
meeting once in
January.
November. In January? Second and third, second and fourth, so. 8th and 22nd, I believe.
Why don't we shoot for the ZBA on the 8th of January? And the Board of Selectmen at their first meeting, whenever that may be. I just hate to lose time knowing that I've got to get warrant ready articles after I get these comments back. So if we did the 8th for the ZBA.
I'm only worried about the 8th in January because we're only meeting once in November and once in December, so we don't really push through a lot of things.
Yeah,
But I could talk. We have a meeting this Wednesday. This Wednesday is our November meeting, so I can talk to to them and bring that up and see if
Okay.
they would like to meet.
Yep, and then we could do the select board in, it sounds like their first meeting is gonna be on the 13th.
So,
Right.
so
If we
you,
can do
Mark,
it- If we can
you're
do it
saying you
the
want
8th,
to, sorry.
what I'm hearing is the 8th, and then if there's a follow-up needed, perhaps on the 22nd.
You want to meet on our meeting night? Is that what you're,
Correct.
all right,
It-
might be dangerous.
If there's a request to meet it on a different night, then it would probably be the 6th.
would be fine that night. It just, if the meeting's running long, you might have to wait. Sometimes the meetings go till 10 or 11, so. Depending on how the agenda is, we might be able to get you in, or it might be, you might have to sit and wait for 3 hours.
Yeah, I don't wanna do that. I
Me
think
either.
if we could do a meeting where they knew we could knock this off rather than sitting around with regular business, that's my preference.
Based upon your experience with ZBA, would it be more amenable to have them meet on like January 6th, which would be our natural meeting night?
I could ask. Everyone's got different schedules. I can't
could do-
speak for them.
I could certainly do January 6th.
So, Joe, if we can task you with asking, having that internal discussion, which is preferable.
Yeah, it probably won't be a meeting night. Very rarely do we get through a meeting night less than 2 hours, especially with 240Bs on them.
Uh-oh.
So I know tomorrow, I know Wednesday's meeting's gonna be it. We got, like I said, we have the 240Bs, which we're not voting on yet, and then we have 3 new hearings, so 3 new applicants, so you know, like I
You
said,
gotta
some
learn,
most
you gotta learn to shout like they did in Franklin. Somebody around 11:15 yells out, American League curfew. Everybody picks up their stuff and goes home.
yeah. So I'll bring it up on Wednesday. We'll see what I come back with.
Okay, thank you.
For planning board, sorry, it would actually be December 10th. The 17th.
Okay. Welcome, Mr. McGrail. So I'm not sure if you heard that, Mark, but planning board is December 10th. So you just lost a week.
I'm okay with that.
Okay.
I gotta stop writing in ink, I guess.
Members. Okay, and it looks like we're okay here on that.
Okay, so planning board and bylaw committee on the 10th at 7 PM.
Correct.
And I may come to that live. So
They
just,
typically, the planning board typically does their piece online, but we could certainly do that where we're in person as well. We can certainly reserve this room without a problem, especially where it'll be called, and it'll be up to the planning board members because they'll be the dominant board that will choose as to how they want to handle that piece.
I wants to meet in person. We've just been told it wasn't a possibility.
Well, then the planning board can join us right here and then can learn how to use the tech when it works. So, Mr. McGrail, welcome. We're having some minor audio issues, which is why the laptop is being used for the audio. The audio in the room is not working well at the moment. So that's the conflict that we're having. Video is working fine. So everything's being recorded without problem. So anything that you say, if you can just make sure you speak up for that. So, but I think to do that, if the planning board will be amenable to meeting in person, I think that would be a great opportunity to really use things. And anyone from the town who wants to contribute, it'll give more people exposure to the recodification. I think the more exposure that people can have and realize that this is an incredibly open process will help as we approach town meeting. And amongst the things that I think has come through pretty clearly in the last couple of town meetings, people want to feel as if they have the ability to provide input into the zoning bylaw provisions. Along those lines, where the changes such as we were talking earlier about the ADUs, where they come from the state legislature, I would not encourage us to mention that that is a change of state law and that's the reason why it's going in. Because I have a feeling that there is a political faction that is against the state trying to take over the componentry of zoning. So just from politically, I think there's, as long as we just state this is something that's in the best interest and is consistent with state law, it'll be fine. It's just a matter of how it gets characterized for those who want to understand the characterization. There's nothing about it that's inaccurate. I'm not suggesting that we deceive or try to deceive anyone. It's just a matter of how we characterize things. For some people, will make a world of difference in how they receive the information. So very, very helpful. Anything else?
If somebody could mail me the articles passed by town meeting for the MBTA, that'd be great.
We can, I will get a copy of the final wording from the town council. Tom, that's SEL, to send or Betsy to send over to you.
Thank you.
Sure.
Just kind of going through this, I think it's something that needs to be corrected.
You
just
have-
so we kind of-
You just have to be, you may, if you want to come down here, just because it's using this microphone.
I went through the draft. It's very minor, but it could be major. Hi, Mark.
Hello.
How are you?
Oh,
Don't ask. Yeah, Mark, I just have one, I think it's kind of a typo or, an oversight, probably a typo,
well,
just to add to your list. It's minor, but could be major. So if you look at 6.1.2
hang on.
of your draft.
That's gonna be in parking, right?
Yep.
What do we got?
So you see where it says access?
If you want to share it,
Hmm,
Is that Joe online too?
yep.
Hi, Joe.
Hey,
6.1.
It's really a hybrid meeting.
6.1.2.
Right there.
Hold on. Hold on a little bit, Mark. I might have written it down wrong. Oh, maybe this is, I had the earlier version, maybe. You can scroll down. It deals with access.
Do you know the provision?
It deals with access and screening. Let me see, hold on a second. Go back up, Mark, if you could. I think
This
it's more,
is the place that talks about landscaping and
yeah,
screening.
scroll back up if you could. It's more at the beginning of parking, I think.
Okay,
So keep going, Mark. Okay, hold on. Okay, go down. Guess I wrote the wrong number down.
And he's working on the
Keep going.
draft that was just added to the website the end of last week.
Okay, keep going, Mark. Keep going, you could.
Right here,
Hold
616.
Hang on, yeah, hold on a second. Keep going, Mark, please.
And you got a typo. Well, was that add it even better.
Oh, keep going, Mark. Ah. Geez, I don't know where it is. I'll get it to you, Mark.
Okay, just send me an email, Brian.
Woodscape screen.
Go back, Mark, I apologize. I can get it at the next meeting instead of keeping.
Okay.
Yeah, just if you look for the word access, basically it's a provision that says all such parking and loading areas shall have access either directly from a public way in the way it currently reads in the bylaw, or through a business or industrial district and not through a residential district. And the way it was changed was you said through the business district with a capital B or industrial district with a capital I. But as you know, we've got sub-business and commercial districts, so that needs to cover all of them, not just,
Okay. Yeah, I understand your point.
you know what I'm getting at.
Yeah,
So
find it and just send me the,
I'll send you an email. I'll send Dan and you an email.
okay.
yeah. Sorry about that. I thought it was 6.12, 6.1.2, but I'm wrong. I think you know what I'm getting at, Mark, right?
Yeah, it's common,
Yeah.
commercial districts, you've got 3 or 4, not just one.
You got it. That's all. So
Yeah.
I'll get you the info on that, Dan, because it was just a change from the way it was before that could have a substantial impact.
Okay.
Inadvertently.
And then we're looking at having meetings on December 10th. Joint with the planning board. And possibly with the town council on January 13th. And with the ZBA on either December 6th or January 6th or January 8th.
Yeah.
Thank you. So the town council will be in January 13th and then ZBA. So those are next meetings that we're discussing those items. So, and before you get too far away, Brian, there was a discussion earlier, you can review the meeting afterwards, where we were discussing the overlay district that currently impacts Brightview and how changes of that may occur, and what the potential impacts and so forth were, which in the end, the very short version of it is nothing new there would be no new negative impacts is the interpretation.
I found it already, Brian, so you don't need to tell me where it is.
What section?
He wants to know what
I think we may have been looking at an earlier version, but here it is in the current version. You might have it up on the screen, I'm not sure. No, I think I have to stop share and go back.
Okay,
Hang on.
it was probably from an earlier version.
Oh, that's what, yeah.
So he's had it reviewed by a couple of staff members internally. That's why
That's what we're
the
talking
draft numbers.
Yeah, this is it right here. It was 6.1.2.
Yeah, so it should just be small b and small I, Mark. That's
Yeah,
all.
no, I got districts plural. I'll fix it, no problem.
Thank you, Mark.
Okey-doke.
Appreciate it.
Okay.
All
Anything
right, so we're off till the 10th of December, and I'm looking forward to seeing the planning board that night.
for this topic? But for this board, our normal meeting would be December 9th, the day before, so we get potentially 2 meetings. I'd recommend that we actually do meet on December 9th to actually go over the non-zoning pieces of the bylaw recodification so that we can actually make sure that we have a list of all other changes to send over to Attorney Mullen so that those can be set up as warrant articles for the spring town meeting. And that will also be when we can start a substantive discussion of the other topics that have been raised. And there were 3 of them that were raised at this past town meeting. So as we discussed a little bit earlier. So December 9th. Looks like the good news is it'll only be December 9th and December 10th for December. I'm quite confident no one really wants to meet on December 23rd, in the evening of December 23rd. As I recall, that's usually when people start to get ready for certain holidays that may be approaching. There are several winter holidays that are approaching that week, and people may want to be preparing instead of being in this room in the meeting. But if people want to be in meeting, we can set up that additional meeting. I'm not seeing any takers. Okay, so December 9th, December 10th, 7 p.m. I'll again put in the request so we can try to do a hybrid meeting. I'll also work on seeing if we can get the IT department to figure out what's going on with the audio in this room as well. Upcoming holidays and observances. There are several between now and the next scheduled meeting, including, of course, Thanksgiving, Black Friday, Native American Heritage Day on November 29th, along with Black Friday. The first Sunday of Advent is December 1st. Cyber Monday, if you needed any separation from any financial gains that you may have not had between Thanksgiving and Black Friday and that weekend, Cyber Monday is a good day to start that. And anything that may remain should be divested on Giving Tuesday. Please be sure to give very generously. Lots of nonprofits in town and other causes that you support need it. If any of you wish to contribute to the town is always willing to accept gifts. They will then be formally accepted by the town council. Pearl Harbor Remembrance Day is on December 7th, and then we will meet the following Monday. Any other items? With that, we will take a motion to adjourn. Anyone want to jump on that one?
So moved.
Okay, Anna's making a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second? Catherine seconds the motion. Has to be a roll call vote. So we will again do by those in the room. Eric. Kevin.
Yes.
Ann. Catherine. Joe. Online.
Yes.
And I'm in affirmative as well. So with that, we will adjourn at 8:19. Kevin has been taking notes. Much thanks. Thank you, Mark, for joining us. If you would,
Thank you, Kevin, to all.
send you an invitation for December 9th. If you wish to join us, you obviously are welcome to. That one will be concerning the non-zoning articles and so forth. I'll send you anything that comes out of that as well. So with that, thank you, everyone, and have a good night.
Thanks.
See you in a few weeks.
Thanks.